Hey everybody, ronarray here, and I did a multiple set of Lich builds this league. I started like Minions and Chaos hybrid, moved to Chaos and finally to the Bone Lich. So in this video I want to do an updated version of my Bone Lich, showcasing mostly updated boss capabilities, together with a little improved clear and possible item swaps. I'm also going to showcase what kind of items we can use and what kind of stats are most important to improve your damage if you're playing Bone Lich or something similar. I hope it's going to be very helpful for you, because right now Bone Lich is one of the most fun Lich builds with a huge clear and pretty nice bossing capabilities, especially compared to other casters. Let's go and I will be able to explain everything that you will need to know about the build. So as a reminder, the build still uses Bone Cage for clear. That's a very cool skill that can cover a pretty decent amount of your screen, and with 100% critical hit chance, it's going to destroy monsters without a lot of issues. It also has a pretty nice auto-pinning feature, so most of the monsters that you are going to hit with your Bone Cage going to be pinned. So melee monsters will be unable to overwhelm you or even attack you. Right now, for the Bone Cage, we changed the support a little. I'm using Astral Projection, Spell Cascade, Arcane Surge, together with Halved and Magnified effect. Arcane Surge here is helping pretty decently with mana, especially during mapping, and Halved is providing decent amount of damage, because before we've been using it for our Bonestorm skill. Magnifying effect is also pretty important, because that way we can hit more monsters with the Bone Cage. I also recommend to make sure that your critical hit chance is as close to 100% as possible. I currently have around 98.25 critical hit chance. With swap of 1 point it will be 99.8, and it's more than enough right now to make sure that we are always critting. The same goes for your main skill, Bonestorm, and Bonestorm is mostly going to be used for bosses. So I changed a few things for the Bonestorm right now, ensuring that we will have maximized DPS on bosses. So first off, we're still using Considered Casting together with Arcane Tempo, Extraction and Execute. But the last gem could be changed. Right now, I think that Inspiration can help you a lot if your level of Bonestorm is too high. My level of Bonestorm right now is 31. In that case, it requires crazy amount of mana, so if you're not using Inspiration and running Virgin instead, it will cost tremendous 1000 mana per second, which is absolutely insane. So in this case, using Inspiration can improve your quality of life on bosses significantly, so I recommend to use it. However, if you still want to do as much damage as possible, there's a support called Virgin. It gives you support channeling skills you use yourself, causing them to deal more damage the longer they have been channeled. You're channeling your skill usually around like a second or two, and it's going to provide 10 or 20 additional damage, which is pretty nice. So I recommend to use Virgin as the last support if you're just interested in damage, but otherwise I think Inspiration is a very good option. We're also using Custom Critical with Detonate That and Impetus, Deliberation and Clarity. That way we can have a little more mana, Detonate That will cast more often together with Impetus and deal a little more damage with Deliberation. I also don't think that Custom Critical is important for bosses, but for mapping, Detonate That is one of the most important parts still, so make sure to use it. For bosses, on the other hand, we are using Blasphemy together with Enfeeble, Heightened Curse and Ritualistic Curse. It's also recommended to move your Clarity to Blasphemy, so you will have more mana on bosses too. So for bosses, it's pretty mandatory and make sure that you are using it. Another important part is the weapon swap. We're going to use a weapon swap with Chiming Staff, because Chiming Staff can give us a pretty cool thing called Sigil of Power. Sigil of Power can give you 15% more spell damage per stage every time when you're casting it and just staying in there. And when you're spending mana in your Sigil of Power, it's going to get stages. So every time, as you can see with a bigger cast, it's receiving stages. It can give us tremendous 60% of additional spell damage at the maximum stages, which is very good. And chiming stuff right now is absolutely mandatory for bosses and could be even used when you're just running your mobs, because it still feels pretty good when you need to hit like harder areas or kill monsters faster. We can use it in the weapon swap, and your weapon will be swapped automatically. When you just click in the sigil power, you will swap to chiming stuff and cast it. After that, every cast will just swap you back, and it should work without auto issues. So now let's talk about the rest of the weapon swap. For that, we're using Orb of Storms. Orb of Storms should be allocated for the second weapon set, so every time when you're going to cast your Orb of Storms, it's going to just move you to your second set of weapons. Make sure that you always have Orb of Storms together with Blink and together with Convalescence allocated for the second weapon set and not the first one, when everything else, including like custom criticals, should always stay in the first weapon set. On top of it, we will be able to change custom critical to blasphemy as I already mentioned, and sometimes when we are changing them, there could be some issues. And some of your auras, such as Blink for example, will stop working. In that case, just recheck it and make sure that it's allocated only in the second weapon slot and blasphemy still stays in the first weapon slot when it's activated. Otherwise, the whole system is just like very easy. We're clicking one button with Orb of Storms, and after that we can use Blink. For Convalescence, you can just click the button at the moment when it's ready, and it will change you to the second weapon slot too. For Convalescence, I'm running Second Wind and Ingenuity. For Blink, I'm running Wind Wave, just in case. And Orb of Storms is here with Pinpoint Critical, Chain, and Font of Mana. The main role that it's playing is just giving us Font of Mana and helping at least a little with mana regeneration. The biggest change right here is that we will still need to use Sigil of Power, and for bosses I also recommend to use Magnified Effect to Sigil of Power too, so we will have like bigger AoE and it will be easier to stay in the radius of Sigil. The only thing that you will need to keep in mind is mana. And for mana, I'm running 90 scale Poscal gloves still, because I think those gloves are amazing. It's not helping with regeneration when we can't hit enemies, but when we can, it's helping a lot. And before the bosses appearing, I recommend to just go into the boss arena and take your gloves off, as you can see right now on my Uber boss skill. And taking the gloves off will help you a lot, because you will have like a full mana at the start of the boss fight, and you will be able to start casting the Bonestorm immediately. After that you will crit and your mana will start regenerating. Another important part is your weapon, so at the wand it's very important to have gain additional damage as extra lightning damage. As you can see, while I'm fighting Zash right now, my lightning damage is pretty much dealing enough damage to shock him consistently, up to 20% increase damage, which is very good for us. We can also have like extra damage as cold, extra damage as fire, but extra damage as lightning is pretty important right here. So for your wand, aim for level of all physical spell skills, cast speed, spell damage and extra damage as lightning. If you can get critical hit chance for spells, it will be just perfect, but if you cannot, don't worry too much about it. And another important tech right here is the helmet. So for the helmet, we are going to utilize the deepest tower's Speedbone Crown when we are fighting bosses. It gives us enemies in your presence count as being on low life. And since we've been using Execute as one of the main supports for 50% more damage when enemies are on low life, I think right now is just an amazing helmet for us. I recommend to stand as close as possible to the boss, as you can see I'm doing during my fight, and it's going to improve your damage significantly, because you're going to have 100% uptime for Execute and deal 50% more damage, which is absolutely huge. You will lose a little survivability if you will replace at 0 Disdain with the deepest tower. So keep in mind, if you are feeling like your survivability is not enough for pinnacles, you can just drop deepest tower and start using at 0 Disdain again. But for me, I can pretty much tank most of the attacks from Zelst or King in the Mist while wearing deepest tower. So I think DPS is pretty much worth it, and it can make your kill a little faster. Also keep in mind that since you're playing a caster build and not one-shotting build compared to like Flicker Amazon that I did before, You will need to keep in mind what kind of abilities the Uber boss uses, and sometimes you will need to dodge a little more and the fight will be a little longer, sometimes it will be a little faster. With that build and pretty nice items, I think fastest you can get is around 40 seconds Zashed kill approximately. And longer part should be like a minute or a little longer. That's pretty much the numbers that I ended up with. Another important moment which can improve us DPS significantly at bosses, it's Prism of Belief. I'm using Prism of Belief Diamond for +3 levels of all Bonestorm skills to improve our damage significantly. The level of the skill should be around 28 approximately, and when you're utilizing the jewel you can reach up to 31, which is very good for the damage. It's also going to make your mana cost significantly higher, that's why I recommend to use Inspiration in that case. But the jewel is pretty cheap and you can get it around like 6 divines approximately right now, maybe 7, but it can improve your damage significantly, adding about 30% of additional damage. And for the 3 right now, I feel like we don't really need a lot of mana if you're going to use Inspiration. So if before I've been using like Aetherflow and I've been using Open Mind, right now I don't think it's necessary. However, if during mapping you feel like your mana regeneration is not enough to cast your Bone Cage, I recommend to just go here and take Aetherflow. Talking about the rest of the 3, we will need to create a second weapon set for our Shimming Staff and all the bonuses here, just to make sure that our Sigil of Power is staying as long as possible on the ground. So for the second weapon set, we're taking Royal. For AoE, we're taking Explosive Impact. We're also taking Chronomancy for increased skill effect duration. We're also taking Entropy for skill effect duration again. And we're also taking Preservation right here for even more skill effect duration. It can give us a very good duration at Sigil of Power. And right now, if I will check mine, I have about 40 seconds Sigil duration and 5 meters Sigil radius, so we will almost constantly will be in. I think it can help both with clear and also can help at bosses. So make sure your second set is pretty much something similar, so it will feel better for you. And for the first set of weapons, we're just taking everything damage related, such things as Tempered Mind, Deadly Force, Jugular, and Moment of Truth. If you will have more points, I genuinely recommend to invest a little more into possible crit hit chance if you're not at 100%, or taking critical spell damage bonus everywhere where you can, because it's going to improve your general damage output. So right now, with such setup, build should showcase a pretty nice result both against single target and especially at clear. I think right now Bone Lich is much better at clear, because single target could be improved and there are like one-shooting builds around, but it's still pretty decent and you will be able to kill all tier 4 pinnacles if you will wish so. And for the Ascendancy, we're still going for a jewel with Crystalline Phylactery there. I recommend to go for spell damage, critical damage bonus and critical spell damage bonus. And taking both Soulless Form and Eternal Life, and taking Necromantic Conduit. If you feel like using the gloves, Night Scale, Post Scale for critical and mana regeneration is not your way, you can just drop Necromantic Conduit too and take Rupture the Soul in that case. Unfortunately, we can't utilize Eldritch Empowerment because our main skill is Channeling, so we're not going to receive much more damage from it. But if you want more damage on your Bone Cage, since it's not Channeling, you can just drop Necromantic Conduit for mapping and go for Eldritch Empowerment, so you will have a little more damage at the Bone Cage. However, I don't really feel like it's too necessary, and most of the time you should be able to one-shot everything with just Bone Cage and detonate that. Talking about the rest of the items, I still recommend to run Seed of Cataclysm both rings. It's going to give us Chaos Resistance, some critical hit chance and critical spell damage bonus. At the focus, we're just focusing for all spell skills, cast speed and additional spell damage. For the boots, we're focusing on resistances, same with belt. And I already commented on helmet and the rest of the items. For the amulet, I think getting cooked can improve your damage significantly, so take it. And if you can get something like level 4 spell skills together with spell damage or cast speed, it's probably going to feel very comfortable. I still recommend to roll at least cast speed on the amulet, because it's going to work much better. And for the amulet, since we are taking the biggest protection for us to just feel better against elements and stuns, we're taking Hallowed right here, I still feel like Silver Charm, which will help us against getting chilled and slowed, could be a nice solution too. So such form of the Bone Lich is pretty much close to its final, and I think right now only improving items further would be a thing. Build showcasing pretty nice results, and it's very fun to play. Hope you've been enjoying it too, and thank you very much for watching as usual. More cool things to come. ronarray out.